That little ditty we used to torment our teachers with when we were kids goes something like this. Onward, upward, Mary had a go. Day by day she tied it to a rope, till at length they got past the rope, and Miss Mary had to run behind it. We had a lot of fun with that, but do you actually know how beautiful these words are? Here's the Song of Guyana's Children by W. Hawley Bryant. Born in the land of the mighty Roraima, land of great rivers and far-stretching sea, so like the mountains, the sea, and the river, great, wide, and deep in our lives would we be. Onward, upward, may we ever go. Day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana's sons and daughters can be. In the land of Kaijur, shining splendor, land of the palm tree, the croton and fern, we would possess all the virtues and graces, we all the glory of goodness would learn. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana's sons and daughters can be. Born in the land where men sought El Dorado, land of the diamond and bright shining gold, we would build up by our faith, love, and labor God's golden city, which never grows old. Onward, upward, may we ever go. Day by day, in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana's sons and daughters can be.
She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand. Hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning a day.
Well, hello, good evening, and guess what? It's Monday. It's that day that we are going to rock and roll, and Monday it's really a good day, right? Well, for me, every single day is a good day, no matter what it is. Every single day. And you know why? Because I'm the real deal. And when I mean the real deal, I'm the real Mark. Over the weekend we're hearing about other Marks. Those are Kanta marks. Those are Paku marks. I am the real Mark, man. I used to be in this. I guess my ancestors were in the fields, right? They were not in the house. And you know exactly what I mean by that. Those who were in the house were eating the king's meat. They were eating massa food. So what massa wants them to say, they would say. If massa said go out and whistle, they can go out and whistle. If master say go out and walk on your hand, they can go out and walk on their hand. If master say put on a skirt and spin around and wine, Mark will do. I'm sorry, not not this Mark at least. All right, hey, good evening. Guess what? It was a good weekend, man. A good weekend. You know why? Because the weekend saw the oppressors them spinning like a top. You know, as little boys, and I'm going to ask some of my guests if they remember how to make a top and how to spin a top. You know, when you get a top and you pull it on, it's spinning. That exactly what the installed regime. And the folks had their stuff in Brooklyn. But what everyone walked away and everyone is talking about is a statement from one man. That is all everybody remembers. That is all the people in the install regime age and spoke the truth. That one man. And it's like you forgot everything else everybody else had to say. I'm being honest with you, right? It's just like if I walk in, remember anybody else but this nice guy. And that's exactly what happened. Sometimes I'm a little full of myself, man. Forgive, right? But on a serious note, what Congressman Hakeem Jeffries did is exactly what all of us knew. What he said, mind you. All of us knew that. Every one of us know that the PPP regime has always been racist, has always been vindictive, has always been spiteful, has always targeted persons, mainly persons of African descent. We know that they target persons, the political and so forth. They that in getting the show going, we just have to ensure that we have backup upon backup for the in dealing with the PPP regime. And so we have backup, right? We have our backup. So don't worry about that. Let me apologize to you guys, but we are always ready. We always have backups in terms of how we are going to handle the situation. We have three persons with us this evening, three guests with us this evening. And sorry about that. Three guests we have on this evening. And those guests are ready. Yeah, sorry about that. We just yeah. Let me just apologize about that. Let me apologize for that, man. Technical difficulties, yes, we are having that at the studio. So our operator quickly asked me to switch this entire thing. So I have switched it. Getting back to Hakeem Jeffries, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, he has been listening to scores of people within his constituency over the years. I remember back in 2011 or 2012, he met with a delegation from Linden, representing Linden, consisting of Sharma Solomon, Vanessa Kissoon, I believe Nigel Hughes. And I was in that meeting along with, I think Aubrey Norton. Yeah, Aubrey Norton was in that meeting as well. And you know, he knew Congressman Hakeem Jeffries knows almost everything the PPP has done to Guyanese, especially Guyanese of African descent. That is a matter of fact. We cannot run away with that. But since we're having some slight difficulties this evening, let me quickly get my guest on. I want to get my guest on as quickly as possible. Um, and I must apologize for the technical difficulties. Good evening, lady and gentlemen. How are you guys doing? Good. Can I? Good evening.
Good evening. It is well, thank you. And how are you?
Yeah,
Greetings to all of you.
I'm hearing Mr. Nigel London. Good evening, Miss Ferguson. I'm not hearing Miss Ferguson. Let's go to Mr. Dinesh Jai Prashad. Good evening, sir. Good evening, Mr. Jai Prashad. All right, good. We got cut off.
Good evening, sir.
Miss Ferguson. Yeah, we got you loud and clear. Let's begin with the Honorable MP from Region Number 6. What's going on in your region, sir? What's the latest?
Good night again. Thank you for having me on 107.1. It's always a pleasure. Good night, Mr. London. Region 6 is not so good right now because this PPP administration is not taking care of the promises that they made for the people in East Berbice Quarantine Region Number 6. I say that to confirm that we have had a year of mismanagement, basically, central, regional, and local level, whereby the people are very much agitated and angry with what is happening in Guyana, in Berbice, in Region 6 at the moment. And this is coming from all supporters for all parties, meaning our supporters are feeling the squeeze as well as the supporters from the PPP. And every day I am receiving complaints and call to make representation for people from East Berbice Quarantine, from all the villages that were affected, flood, COVID, mismanagement by the NDC, negligence, all these things happening, and yet the PPP administration is turning a blind eye as to all these things. I must say, Mark, that the COVID is the big one in Guyana right now, and Berbice, Region 6, is no different. We feel pressure, the Berbician feel pressure in the manner in which this administration failed to deal with the COVID situation in Guyana. So that's the main thing at the moment. As we go on, we'll touch a little bit more on the other aspects of what the people suffering and going through. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will get to that because a lot of people are suffering. Even those who would have voted for the PPP regime are suffering. They're complaining every single day. Things are not really that good at all in the country. And it's all because of bad governance of the PPP regime. We know that, the installed regime. Let's go to Linden. Let's touch on Mr. London, Nigel London, who has been here before. It's the second time here on our show. We want to touch on some matters that he discussed before and matters of importance to all of us. But before I get to that, Mr. London, good evening again. And how is the situation in Linden, Region 10, as it pertains to the COVID-19?
Good evening, and good evening to the two members of Parliament who are here and to all of the viewers as well as listeners. Thank you so much for having me here again. The situation as relates to my cause for standing in reference to this order, the recent one, in Linden, has lent itself to some degree of us experiencing still great grievances where persons are unable to transact business. It seems to be some degree of short-sightedness on the part of those decision makers. People are trying to access NIS, persons are trying to do business with the post office, and they cannot do so because staff who are not vaccinated. I passed the LECI, that's the Electricity Corporation, this morning on my way to Georgetown. The staff would have been locked out of the office. I did a live broadcast to that effect, but I was grateful and happy to know they were later let in, as well as those at the post office, because I guess good sense prevailed. But we do not need to see a piecemeal approach to this matter. It makes sense for there to be a complete reversal or relaxing of this order so that people can be granted relief.
All right, thank you so much. We'll get back to Mr. Nigel London on the situation. Not only of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic out there in Linden, but we want to touch on some other issues here with Mr. Nigel London, who is with us here. So the other thing that we want to do is let's go to the Honorable Member of Parliament, Annette Ferguson. Good evening to you, ma'am, and hope all is well at your end. All right, we're not getting to hear you. It appears that something is wrong with your mic, but we're not hearing you at all, Honorable MP. We're not hearing you. So before we as you try to fix that, Ms. Ferguson, can we hear you now? Yeah, we're still not hearing the Honorable Member of Parliament, Ms. Annette Ferguson. Yeah, we're not hearing her. So let's get back to the Honorable MP for Region number 6. How would you describe, briefly, how would you describe the PPPs, the installed PPP regime, 1 year in office? But before I allow you to get to that, let me see if Ms. Ferguson, can we hear you now? Can we hear you? Hello.
Mark? Hello,
Yes.
Pleasant Eve.
Okay.
You hear me now?
Yeah. Turn up your volume a little. Let's get ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's better.
Your volume is usually up, very loud. What's happening tonight? Somebody's tampering with it?
Apparently, but you're hearing me now?
Loud and clear. So
Okay, good.
briefly, what is happening in your neck of the woods, region number 4? Lots and lots of problems. But briefly, what's the main thing bothering you and people in your constituency?
Okay, just before that, Mark, a pleasant evening to you, and I'm happy and honored to be here, and even better in the presence of Apostle London and also my colleague, Member of Parliament, Denish Jai Prashad. A pleasant evening also to those listening to us and also viewing this broadcast. Mark, look, what is happening in region number 4? I don't think it is different from what the other regions are experiencing. But region number 4 being, the region with the hype of activities, a number of persons are disgruntled with regards to the mandatory vaccines being imposed on them. So persons have been protesting across the region, whether here on the east bank of the Demerara, on the east coast of Demerara, or central Georgetown, calling on the installed regime to rethink their strategies with regards to the imposition of this mandatory vaccine. So that is what is happening in central Georgetown here, Mark.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable MP Ferguson. It seems as though Mr. Jai Prashad is having problems with his internet out there in Berbice. Gosh. So let us just give him 30 seconds. Hopefully he's going to be back. The other story that we're hearing that the installed regime has decided to take away the security service of his worship, the mayor of Georgetown, Obraj Narang. We will get to that later on. Mr. Jai Prashad, how would you rate the regime, the PPP, for the 1 year they've been in office? And I don't want to put words in your mouth at all. They have fired over 3,000 persons, mainly of African descent. They are persecuting persons all of whom are of African descent, or most of whom are of African descent. And lands have been taken away from people mainly of African descent. How would you describe the PPP's 1 year in office? Mr. Jai Prashad.
Mark, are you hearing me?
Yeah, we are hearing you loud and clear.
Loud and clear?
Yep.
Give me a
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. We're hearing you.
Yes. So basically, I would say the entire year has been a year of mismanagement. And
Again, I must apologize. Bad internet service in Guyana, but mostly bad internet service out there in region number six. I apologize. Go ahead, Pandit Ji. We'll try to get you as quickly as possible, so we will have you go. But go ahead.
yes, sir.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Jai Prashad. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. So I would say that it has been a year of discrimination, an entire year of discrimination against one set of individuals. And what I want to send home tonight, Mark, is that my African brothers and sisters has been the focus of discrimination for this past year. Most of them were sent home. Most of them are out of job, contract not renewed, services terminated. These individuals have mortgage, bills to pay, family to feed, and this administration
All right, we just can't continue with the Honorable Member of Parliament in East Berbice, region number 6, talking about the ills of the PPP regime over the past year since they have been installed. Lots and lots of discrimination. We know of over 3,000 persons, 99% of them are African descent, and they cannot run away from that fact. It's something that they have done in 1992. They have done it again in 2000 or 2020 or 2021. They continue to do that, but we're going to dig into that some more if you be a little patient with Mr. Jai Prashad because of the internet. Go ahead, sir. Make your point and we'll allow you to go. Yes, Mr. Jai Prashad. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. I think it is a deliberate move around this time every evening for us to have these kind of difficulties. But nevertheless, once there is a will, there is a way. So as I was saying, it has been a year of discrimination against basically my supporters, my African brothers and sisters. They were sent home more than any other ethnic group. Contract terminated, service terminated. These individuals have bill to pay, mortgage, family to feed, and they were sent home in a pandemic without asking the question, where will these individuals have an income from? So when I hear things being said around the world, it fits directly that there is some form of discrimination against my African brothers and sisters. I say that because the COVID mandatory vaccination, we know in Guyana, the person who paid the most taxes in this country are African brothers and sisters. They are the public servants. And you are putting a system in place to prevent these individuals from going to work because they choose not to take the vaccine, or their religious views prevents them from taking the vaccine. And you are putting a system in place to say that you must take the vaccine before you enter the place of work. Let us look deeper than what is gazetted here. This is a blatant move to sabotage the public service system. We know that predominantly African brothers and sisters take the low-paying public service job rather than the other jobs. And we have stick with these public service jobs for years. We have been paying our pay-as-you-earn taxes every month. These taxes are being used to build the schools and the hospital and the roads. And now you are putting additional pressure on these individuals who are paying the bulk of taxes. We are not hearing that the fishermen must take the mandatory vaccine before they go out and sea, or the rice farmers. But we are seeing that public servants, people who hold public offices must, and you got to show a vaccine card before you enter the place of work.
Let me ask you
what
this,
is happening to the union?
Go ahead, Mr. M.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, what is happening to the union? Why are the unions silent on this? So Mark, the people of East Berbice Quarantine are very much disturbed. Also, the poor citizens who have to go to the services, the hospital, the health center, the RDC, the NDC. There is a security guard there telling an individual 60, 70 years of age that you cannot enter, you have to go home because you do not have a COVID vaccine. This is nonsense. Put systems in place, put your screens in place in the office that you can speak to them from a distance. But moon does run till they catch up. What people are saying? Moon run till they catch up.
And I'm looking at your Wi-Fi because I don't want your Wi-Fi to shut down because I want to get to the other two guests also. But finally, before we allow you to go, Mr. MP, why do you suppose, or do you think that this is a direct target by this installed regime against persons of African descent, that it's blatant discrimination, racism? What are your thoughts?
The answer is open. You ask the question. Let us bring the stats. Ethnicity. Which race, which ethnic group was sent home from August to August? Which ethnic group suffering because of this PPP administration? Which communities are being neglected from August to August? And you will see that there is a blatant discrimination against African brothers and sisters in this country. Because the PPP is well aware that the Africans are the one that hold on to the public service. They are the one that are paying the taxes. They hold on to the low-paying jobs. But because our numbers are growing in these areas, it is a threat to them. They feel, threatened. But we have hold on to this low-paying job when it was 30-something thousand a month under their administration. Thanks to David Arthur Granger, he moved that from 39,000 to 70,000. And this they cannot comprehend up to now. They cannot comprehend that after 3 years, 4 years, public servants are receiving actually double what they used to receive under the PPP in 2014. So this is carrying a effect on them. Psychologically, they cannot meet up to that standard. So they want to put pressure on our public servants. They want to put pressure on our Guyanese so that people will be frustrated. So this is my take tonight. I want Guyanese to ask the question: who are the solid taxpayers in this country? Who are protecting this nation? Who are building the foundation of this nation? And you find out who's shipping out their money overseas. When they reap their produce, where the money go? Their money don't use to make the road in the areas. To be specific, Blackbush Polder. We know our brothers and sisters, they're planting rice. But ask them at the end of the year, how many of them use that money to build the schools and the roads in Blackbush? And you find out who owned the land. You find out who owned the land. I'm saying this to all Guyanese, that it has come to a point now that we need to ask strong questions. Our brothers and sisters are there in the army representing us. They're in the police force, nurses, teachers, and you want to put system in place now to cause them to be frustrated and agitated. If you want a PCR test every 3 days, then pay for it as the state. You can do that, but do not put people under severe and extra pressure more than what they are suffering at the moment. So that is my take, Mark, on the 1 year
Mr.
of
MP,
mismanagement.
I thank you so much. You did indicate earlier that your internet problem, that you have internet problem in East Berbice, and we understand. I wish you would have stayed around longer in terms of having this discussion for an hour with us, but you do have to go. But thank you so much. I agree with everything that you have just said. Continue the great work there
Mark,
in East Berbice Region 6. Yes, sir.
finally, before I go, Mark, I want to
Sure.
say that my sympathies to the family of Ishweshwar Kami Ramsarup, the
Yeah.
family. You have our support in prayers, and he has done well for Guyana. We know that
Mr.
his soul
Ramsuru
will be taken.
passed away today. Kami Ramsuru, former chairman
Thank you.
of the People's National Congress. Kami Ramsuru, former chairman of the People's National Congress Reform. We can't say these things for some other major political parties. We've seen one set of people all the time. General Secretary, presidential candidate. General Secretary, presidential candidate. Condolences to the relatives and friends and supporters of the PNC over the passing of Mr. Kami
Thank you
Ramsuru.
very much.
Thank you for that reminder.
Good night, guys. See you.
Jai Prashad. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So we'll continue with the program. We just thought that Dinesh Jai Prasad's program is on every Tuesday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Dinesh Jai Prasad is on 107.1 FM. Before we get to our two guests, we still have quite some time to rock and roll this evening. But let me remind you guys that the Honorable Mayor of Georgetown has gotten his security detail taken away by the PPP regime. At least that's the information we have received. Yet to be confirmed, but I believe that His Worship the Mayor Obraj Narain did admit publicly that that is the case. I see some supporters of the PNC are asking again that I mentioned the death of former chairman of the PNC, Mr. Kami Ramsru, passed away today. On behalf of all of us here at 107.1 FM, our condolences. All right, so before we get to our guest, we want to turn the heat up a little. Let's play this tape of that protest, the rally out in Brooklyn. And one of the things that walked away, or the main thing that people walked away at that rally, or from that rally, there was only one thing left on people's mind. One thing. And here is that one thing. And let me just say good work to all of the persons who organized to make that rally a reality. The PNC folks in Brooklyn, the PNC folks in New Jersey, and the PNC folks out, I believe, in Queens as well. They all got together and got the job well done. Good. So here is this.
What's your bio, Rikisha?
It's right there.
Yes, yeah.
You're excited.
All right, our operator obviously queued up the wrong tape, and our operator Lemon hopefully can get his act together, and we'll get a correct tape. But let's go to Mr. Nigel London, Mr. London, and the Honorable MP Ferguson. You guys heard the Honorable Congressman of the United States of America, Hakeem Jeffries. And I said the Honorable because he was brave enough to say exactly what it is. No sugarcoating, exactly what it is. He spoke about the racism. He spoke about victimization. He spoke about political persecution, well, in so many words, and all these different things. He has also called for the U.S. ambassador to Guyana to pack up and go. lots of things we want to talk about. But let's get to Mr. London first. In terms of the racism and the victimization that we heard coming out of the mouth, not the first time, but maybe the first time publicly that we are hearing it from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. How did you feel when you heard those sort of sentiments coming out from the congressman, Mr. London?
I am actually overjoyed or relieved to have someone of his stature share a view that I've been speaking to for quite a while. And to those who are listening and those who are viewing, I'm fortunate or unfortunate probably to sit here in an apolitical position, being able to speak freely without any allegiance. So I'm speaking from a patriotic perspective. Um, I have done a program. I'm not sure if that can be heard, but it's clear. Can you hear me clearly,
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Benschop?
right ahead. We hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. Sure. I have done a broadcast on Facebook and social media in which I asked a question on two occasions. Is it coincidence or is it blatant racism? And that was regarding the actions that I saw. I'm speaking from Linden, first of all, where, for example, the St. John Ambulance Brigade has served us for so many decades, was totally shut down. 27 or so employees were sent home, probably all of them of Afro descent. They were not sent home, and I believe in being factual, truthful, and absolutely straightforward in what I have to say to people. They were not sent home by Apple AFC. They were sent home by this government. Was it coincidental, or was it an act of racism? I looked at the number of persons, and indeed the public service is heavily weighted by those who are of African descent. And I wrote a piece before that the two main parties in Guyana have a different way in which they deal with the public service. It is known that the PNC or APNRC are more favorable towards the public service. And the PPP Civic is more inclined towards the private sector because they're more business oriented. And that lends itself to a definite conflict and war whenever the time comes around for whoever has to lead these people. But in reference to this government that's in, I have seen and I've spoken to the number of instances in which people of African descent were dismissed and who replaced them. Certain key positions, for example, at NISIL, the head was removed. Who replaced him? Is it coincidence? Is it that there is loyalty of some sort? Or is it that they just cannot help themselves? Let me on this program make it clear that I am a firm believer, and that's my view, that and that's why I don't issue this caveat to anyone. If I have to say to you that I'm not racist, I am 100%. That's my view. I do not announce that I'm not racist because my actions deem whether I am or I am not. And I have looked at the PNC, for example, and today is not coincidental that the PNC can have a record that there was a chairman who was of Indian descent. I have asked the PPP Civic and their supporters to tell me for more than 1 year, actually since 2015 or more than beyond then, name one general secretary of the PPP Civic who was African descent, and name one presidential candidate of the PPP Civic who was African descent. I am yet to wait. I'm yet to receive, as a matter of fact, that answer. Is it coincidence or is it blatant racism? So I'm overjoyed when Congressman Jeffrey.
I guess it's more blatant racism because the PPP over the years, and they've been around. I think what is it, about 60 years now, and they have had not a single person of African descent as their general secretary or even a presidential candidate and so forth.
Exactly.
I think they were talking once about Roger Luncheon becoming a presidential, and the folks of another ethnicity shut it down completely. So they might be more comfortable position as prime minister because that is basically the position puppets, and we know who those puppets are. But let's go over to our next guest before we come back to you, Mr. London. Honorable Member of Parliament Annette Ferguson has been, and she continues to be, persecuted by the current installed regime. She is before the courts facing some trumped up, silly, dotish charges. Lots of things have happened to persons like her, but yet this regime, this installed regime, continues to put their backs or turn an eye as to what is really happening from reality, from the truth. They don't want to accept that their actions are racist, that they're going after persons of African descent, firing them from their jobs, persecuting them, jailing them, fictitious charges against them, and all these sort of things. Miss Ferguson, as a victim of this installed regime, how do you feel when, or how did you feel when you heard the Honorable Congressman Hakeem Jeffries describe the regime in Guyana in the exact manner all of us already knew? How did you feel?
Okay, Mark, with your permission, quickly, let me just express my condolences to Comrade Ramsarup, and also to share with your guest here and also your viewers that not only Kami Ramsarup we had as an Indo-Guyanese as the chairperson of the People's National Congress Reform, we also had the late Winston Murray, who served as one-time chairperson of the People's National Congress Reform. Mark, look, I'm going to quote the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries' words here. And this is what he had to say yesterday. We will not tolerate racist injustice. We will not tolerate racial injustice. And Mark, to answer your question, how I feel after those words were uttered by him, the Honorable Congressman has pleased my heart. He has pleased my heart because what he uttered there yesterday wasn't any words plucked from a hat which he wasn't wearing. But this is exactly what Guyana has been faced with, more so Afro-Guyanese since August 2nd, 2020 to even current. We had, my comrade, my colleague Jai Prashad said it earlier. We had over 2,000 persons, predominantly Afro-Guyanese, had their services terminated without any justification. The entire public service, Afro-Guyanese, again, they haven't benefited from an increase in wages and salaries from this installed regime from 2020 and also 2021. We had lands occupied by Afro-Guyanese, single women, women with babies, women with children, who occupied lands out on the east coast of Demerara, to be specific, in the Success area. Those lands were flooded. What else we had? The heinous killing of the two Henry boys. To date, justice has not been served. What else we had? Senior political leaders, Valda Lawrence, Carol Smith Joseph, James Bond, Christopher Jones. Now I've joined the gang. You understand me? Placed before the courts. You have David Patterson before the courts. You have Roxanne Mayers. You have Lowen Field. And I can Clement Mingo. Something is definitely wrong, Mark. What have Afro-Guyanese done to deserve this kind of harassment, this kind of injustices being meted out by the People's Progressive Party Civic? And Mark, it is time to stop this nonsense. Enough is enough. So that is what I would want to add.
It is time to stop it. I have been hearing this enough is enough thing for a long time. When will is enough be enough? We've been hearing it's got to stop. I mean, that is why the Congressman Hakeem Jeffries has had enough. So he has said exactly what it is on his mind, exactly what the truth is. But the people within the installed regime are upset. They're hurt. Hakeem has hurt their feelings, right? You have mentioned all of those people who have been charged, persecuted. You have Colwyn Heath London. I think Mr. London actually spoke of him being, and Trevor Ben, and all these people. But James Bond James Bond in Alive has mentioned that he has a lot of friends all over, including lots of friends in the PPP. So James Bond might be one of the lucky ones to possibly be saved. But let's get back to Mr. London. Mr. London, back to Congressman Jeffrey's statement. Um, he has had enough. Why do you suppose that people in this installed regime are so upset with Hakeem Jeffries?
It has a lot to do with, and that is why I said earlier that I'm fortunate to not be a politician in my sitting here. So I do not have allegiance to anyone. But what I speak to is the fact that someone from out of this nation could have interactions, obviously, with persons who are aware of or would have experienced something that lent itself to him making such a comment. And I'm comforted because I'm someone who is extremely aggressive when it comes to dealing with racists, either African racists or Indian racists or wherever you are. I cannot tolerate racism. It is destructive. I believe it is a mental disorder. And when a congressman from the USA has to speak to what is happening in Guyana, I can expect that a government will be most upset because it affects their image. This to me, though, is an easy or bears or carries a very simple solution. I believe, and that is how I practice it in my life. I do not seek to argue to defend my position. I simply live my life and show you. So if you're not racist in the PPP Civic, then simply demonstrate that you're not racist, which is what I asked for years. So maybe Congresswoman will get them to have a response that will benefit me. If you are not racist, then tell me why the St. John's Ambulance Brigade staff were sent home, this work was terminated, but Guy Suko, when it comes to ethnicity, are predominantly East Indian people, and they are not being terminated. They were re-employed, and my taxpayer money contributed to them having a salary increase.
Yeah.
How could this be coincidence? So for the congressman to express his view, which he has a right to do, there's a simple solution. It could be that because I'm not a member of parliament and I'm not the prime minister of Guyana, I don't have the issue of an image to protect. But make it simple. Don't ask to meet Congressman Jeffries. Simply prove to him that what he's saying is untrue, which would then lend itself to your saying the public servants receive a salary increase. Or we cater to the teachers who predominantly are Afro-Guyanese and we give them an increase because we respected what they do. Oh, the nurses serve, who predominantly are Afro-Guyanese, they served throughout the pandemic. We value their service to us and we've injected $2 billion as a grant to them in regard to honor. You did nothing of that, sir. You ventured into, and I'm saying to PPP Civic here, because Madam Ferguson and you, Mr. Benschop, know that I believe in speaking straight down the line. And I'm addressing a matter that you're asking about. Yes. The PPP Civic has not rewarded the nurses and the frontline workers, whom they deem heroes, for what they've done. Instead, you lock them out of a building in Linden until 10:30, 11 at night, because most of them are predominantly Afro-Guyanese. Congressman Jeffrey.
Let me ask you this, Mr. London. Do you believe that if they were at Port Morant Hospital, not that all the nurses at Port Morant Hospital are of East Indian descent, or at Kildonan Health Center or Skeldon Hospital, yes, but let us say, for example, if at Maibikuri Hospital on the current team, Blackbush, Poland, all the nurses were of East Indian descent, do you think they would have gotten that treatment from this installed regime?
Well, the fortunate thing for me is that I don't have to think. I have reality before us. They were not. They were not locked out. And I mentioned it. Nobody from Port Morant Hospital was locked out. Nobody from any health center in the PPP strongholds were removed because they know services were needed. The only place in terms of a hospital functioning on a large scale in which so many members of staff were removed or locked out was the Linden Hospital complex. And sadly, even our only COVID center, the staff would have been removed so nobody could have been tested until I made a petition. This cannot be coincidence. And if it is coincidental, then make it simple. All they have to do is to prove me wrong, and they haven't done so.
You know, folks were locked out at the COVID hospital in Georgetown as well, and they had 3 nurses to tend to 75 patients. Do you believe, quickly, Mr. London, it is a direct act of racism by this regime, PPP regime?
I believe because I've not been furnished with any response that speaks otherwise. Coincidence is not a word that I use because I don't believe in it. But I was willing to give the government an opportunity to prove that coincidence does exist, and they've not yet done so. And there has to be a cause that lends itself to persons of African descent when the United Nations declared that the decade of those of African descent is upon us. How could it be treated instead of treated with honor? How could it be on the day of emancipation, of slavery, an announcement is made that further enslaves people who work in the public sector, who are predominantly of African descent? It could possibly be that the government is detached, so far detached from reality that they do not recognize the ethnic component of the public sector. And if that's the case, then you may be excused for being ignorant, but you cannot be excused for your actions towards people of African descent.
Well said, Mr. London. If you're now joining us, this is Straight Up. I'm Mark Benschop. And for those of you on the ground listening to us via 107.1 FM, good evening to you as well. Just to have you guys know that this is not a target against supporters of the PPP regime. We know that supporters of the PPP regime will most likely come out in their numbers to condemn the act of racism or acts of racism and victimization,
Yes.
especially against persons of African descent. Now, going back to Ms. Ferguson now, thank you for reminding us that Mr. Winston Murray was also once chairman of the People's National Congress Reform. And I do believe, if my memory serves me correctly, that Mr. Kami Ramsroop was also General Secretary of, or there was a person of East Indian descent who was General Secretary of the PNC as well.
I
So
think
the
it's what
PNC,
was
sorry, go ahead.
I think it was is it China Singh or something, if my memory serves me
Well,
accurate.
whoever it was,
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
point is that the PNC is way ahead of this corrupt and racist PPP when it comes to putting persons of other ethnicity in senior positions within the PNCR. But let's get back to the statement made by that courageous Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who spoke the truth. Why do you, Madame Ferguson, believe that the PPP is so hurt by that statement, by the truth?
Well, first of all, Mark, we must remember that the PPP is a bunch of people that don't believe in the truth. It's all about them, propagating a lot
We're
of,
talking about those in leadership position, those
yes, yes,
good.
yes,
Thank you.
right?
Mhm.
Um, they're so accustomed to, spreading propaganda and all manner of things. So when the truth really hits home, it really hurts. It really hurts. And that the words spoken by Congressman Jeffers
Jeffries.
really Jeffries, sorry, really would have, carry I don't know if it is a syringe that went through the skin of those in the leadership of the People's Progressive Party Civic. So I don't know how they're going to get out of it because one, it is the truth that was spoken. Two, we are living it every single day. So for them to come out to probably denounce what the Honorable Congressman alluded to yesterday is basically to say to the entire world, like what they have been saying, is that, my government is a government for all. My government is not a government that has been discriminating against people. My government has not victimized against any particular ethnic group. But Mark and Pastor London, Apostle, sorry, we are
That's
all
fine.
very aware that the People's Progressive Party Civic is doing exactly what the Honorable Congressman would have said. So indeed, it has hurt and it really went deep into their skins. So I don't know how they're going to get out of it.
They certainly can wiggle out of it because it's the truth. people are speaking of that truth. And the leader of the opposition, Honorable Joe Harmon, issued a statement to that effect in support of what the Honorable Congressman Hakeem Jeffries has said. And he holds a senior position in the Democratic Black Caucus. And I'm sure that those are things that are being shared, those very sentiments are being shared by maybe majority of those other members in the Black Caucus. And I know also there are lots of Guyanese who have been calling and writing their representatives, their Congress representatives, or maybe the Senate representatives in their area. So kudos to all of you Guyanese who have participated in this. Enough is enough. But the regime now, suddenly, and we switch back to Mr. London to take a bite at this question. The regime suddenly wants to invite Mr. Hakeem Jeffries to the table for discussion. My question is, when I saw that, I was like, oh, really? But to discuss what, Mr. London? Your take.
Well, I would like to think that he would like to change his views or have him issue a statement that would give a better public image as to what he spoke or about what he spoke about them. But let me just remind persons again, and I'm doing this, please, for me to do some purpose. I'm not doing this with political affiliation. I'm distant from any political party. So please, viewers, hear my heart and hear what I'm saying to you. I'm speaking as a patriotic individual here. The PPP Civic invited lobbyists into our nation. No other parties ever done that. And I spoke to that as well. You invited the US lobbyists to participate in aiding in your, what you claim to be, victory. That's another discussion. Once you do that, I said to you that if you get these lobbyists to access US political representatives, they're not like Guyanese. And you will start what you can't deal with. That's the reality. So Mike Pompeo came here and had a lot to say. So what makes it wrong if Hakeem Jeffries expresses himself about how he feels about Guyana? What makes Mike Pompeo so important that what he felt about Guyana then is of lesser value than what Hakeem Jeffries feels now? So the PPP Civic will try their best because they invited lobbyists and they invited US politicians to have a deep dive into our culture, which would be a shock for many. And so now Hakeem Jeffries may be invited so that he can have, or the PPP Civic may try to repair or do damage control. You cannot do it because the problem is that Hakeem Jeffries would have had an opportunity to hear on a consistent basis the plight and the pleas of persons from the diaspora. And he spoke in a manner that made me realize that he is unprepared to accept this because it is not uncommon to Guyana, but it should not be present in Guyana.
Well said, Mr. London and Mr. Hakeem Jeffries, like you've said. This is not a situation where he jumped on the stage yesterday and spoke something that maybe he's not aware of. He has been briefed years now, way before. In fact, his constituency is made up of a lot of Guyanese. So he's aware of these sort of things. And I wish our operator Lemon would let us hear that tape because he spoke about so passionately about African Guyanese and how they're being discriminated against. And the fact that he went as far as to remind folks that African Guyanese are also family oriented, because there are folks who love to call African Guyanese hungry belly, DOGS, they live in basements, and all these derogatory things. But let's get back to the Honorable Congresswoman. For a moment, I thought I was interviewing my late friend Shirley Chisholm. But Member of Parliament, Hakeem Jeffries, I think I asked Mr. London the question. I'm asking you the same question I asked him as to why do you think these people now in the installed regime are so eager to have Mr. Jeffries sit down at the table to have supper with them, to talk to them, when in fact they weren't concerned about him. They have never, as far as I'm aware, reached out to him to have a conversation, to discuss as to how we can or how they can improve race relations in Guyana. Instead, they have destroyed it completely. They want to talk, as Mr. London said, they want to talk to people like Mike Pompeo, who can come in and have an opinion on Guyana's politics because it is favorable to the PPP. They got the guys like Mr. Meeks, Gregory Meeks, who can come in, Congressman Meeks, and talk favorable things for the PPP. It is acceptable then, right? It is the same Mike Pompeo who refused to meet with members of the opposition because he thinks he was high and mighty. No wonder why he is where he is today, right? But his name is calling out in Afghanistan with the Taliban's and so forth and so on. That's another story. What is the agenda of the PPP to suddenly now pretend as though they're so concerned and they so love Hakeem Jeffries that they want him to sit and have discussions with them?
You know, Mark, I think I said it earlier, but I didn't say it in these exact words, but I'm going to say it now. The People's Progressive Party Civic, they are strangers to the truth, right? They are strangers to the truth. And what the Honorable Congressman said, like all of my other colleagues who would have taken to the stage there yesterday, and even back home here, we have been preaching it, that the People's Progressive Party Civic has been carrying out, or they have been carrying out, a racist agenda since August 2nd, 2020, and they have continued to ensure that the racist agenda continues to hurt one set of people in this society. The question we need to ask Mark and Apostle London, why now? Why would you want to meet with the Honorable Congressman? What is there for you to tell him? Is it a case whereby, just like how the installed Prime Minister last evening, publicly stated in a press statement that what was said by members of Parliament and other dignitaries that were there were absolutely lies? But we know, Mark, that what we have been saying home here, what we have been calling out this regime for, is the racist antics against Afro-Guyanese. So Congressman Jeffries is not unaware of what is happening. So I don't know whether Congressman Hakeem will accept the invitation by this regime. And I would want to publicly say this to him this evening, if he's on this platform listening to us, that he should not even accept any invitation from this installed regime. Because what is there? What is it that they're going to say to him when the entire world is aware that the People's Progressive Party Civic has indulged in total racism here in Guyana against Afro-Guyanese?
And the evidence is huge.
Exactly.
Huge.
Exactly.
We've heard from you about that. And this is not just to remind our listeners and viewers, this is not the PPP just as of August 2nd, 2020. You know, Miss Ferguson, because you have been in the trenches also during those 20-something years of the PPP's dictatorship. It is the same thing all over
again.
Indeed. So, yeah, it is the PPP, racist PPP. Now, Mr. London, getting back to you, sir.
Sure.
Why do you suppose the PPP, in swiftly responding, and we gotta say, yes, they did a good job in swiftly responding, and I'm emphasizing on the word swiftly, hoping that those guys in the coalition will pick up, that they need, we have somebody in the opposition here, the Honorable MP. But the PR for the coalition need to react as swiftly as possible. But in most cases, they don't. That's another story. Why do you suppose, Mr. London? I just want to hear it from you, and our listeners do, I guess. Why do you suppose
Why?
they put this guy, Mr. Mark Phillips, whom I'm sure you probably saw walking around Linden or something. Why did they put him to respond to Mr. Jeffries?
Thank you for the question. And I have asked myself the same. The answer I do know, and I'll try my best to present it in a manner that is most respectful to the Prime Minister as he sits in that seat. But whenever a situation of racism would have raised its head, and in this case, it's an international stage it was raised on, the matter was addressed, and by someone who is called one of the hot shots in the Democratic caucus, seen as a young or budding Obama. So they know that his words have a lot of weight. If that's the case, for the PPP Civic to decide at leadership level that Mark Phillips, the Prime Minister, should be the best candidate to speak to debunking or an effort to debunk what Jeffrey should have said, they would have defeated the entire purpose. Because to be that selective in choosing an Afro-Guyanese to say that what you're saying is untrue, it would have been easier for them to say, just take a look at Linden. It is an APNAFC stronghold, a PNC stronghold, and ever since we won, Mr. Phillips, who's from Linden, would have made it his duty to ensure that Linden is now a budding economy and one that has been not suffering from massive retrenchment and unemployment. He couldn't do that. Hence, the statement or the face chosen to represent the cause to say you're not racist is simply want to present an Afro-Guyanese person to represent your cause instead of to present facts to say that what Jeffrey said was untrue. I am still trying to wrap my mind around why a group of people who are not racist are so bothered by such a statement. Maybe because I'm not in the political circle, but I'm not bothered by things that are untrue. Because truth stands without a defense.
Offense. So true.
All right.
For the PPP Civic, sorry, just to make this say
That's okay. Go ahead, sir.
The only cause, and I don't want anybody to miss this, please. The only cause that I've seen over the past year that has united Guyanese, regardless of ethnicity, is this mandatory vaccination. Everything else, I have seen people suffering only on one side of the ethnic scale. But this one has caused many supporters to reach out to me to say, how could our leaders do this to us? We are suffering in the beast. Please come. Because this is not about ethnicity anymore. This is about the oligarchs, where some people believe that they're so powerful that they step up the game against those who support them. And that takes you beyond the realm of a racist. That's when you believe that you're a superhuman being and nobody can touch you. And that's where Ghana is headed in the near future. Probably there already.
All right. I wouldn't be so nice to Mark Phillips sitting in that office. I think that it was deliberate for them to place Mark Phillips in that embarrassing position. I think Mark Phillips is comfortable being embarrassed. He doesn't mind because he likes the perks, he likes the crumbs that he gets within the house. And usually persons like Mark Phillips, when they sit in that house, they are basically not aware as to the many things that they do to hurt people who look like them. So Mark Phillips doesn't understand the struggle. He doesn't know about what people have endured under the hands of the PPP, because it appears as though he has been eating the king's meat for quite a while now. So here is his opportunity now to further embarrass himself and embarrass the office that he holds and embarrass the people of whom he looked alike. Now, I'm not saying that because it's Black folks that he has to stand up and represent Black people. What I'm saying is that he has to stand up and represent what is known as the truth. He is part of a regime that is racist. He is part of a regime that is vindictive. He is part of a regime that continues to persecute mainly persons of African descent. So nothing that he has said in that statement makes any sense. And I agree with the Honorable Member of Parliament, Annette Ferguson, that Mr. Hakeem Jeffries should not accept any invitation from the PPP to sit at the table with them at this point in time. Do
Permit me,
you
please, if
agree
I can, Mr.
with that,
Benschop. Yes,
Mr.
please.
Lund? I was getting
Uh,
to you.
I yes, I believe that Mr. Jeffrey should accept the invitation on one condition: that he speaks on a live television broadcast and they address it with the members of the opposition and some members of the public being present. The small man, I call them, like the nurses that you from the St. John's Ambulance Brigade, some of the workers who were sent home, those who are being accused of many things in court, and more than anything else, I hope that he can have Madam Claudette Singh sit there too at that forum on live television and have us all hear these people say to us that these actions that are being meted against GCOM staff has nothing to do with racism, nothing to do with the fact that out of 49 or 47 ballot boxes that had nothing to do with any of these officials' direct hand, I have seen only African descent or descendants before the court. I hope that Mr. Jeffries can accept such an offer so that those would not be able, or who are responsible would not be able to simply say, here's a bouquet of flowers, here's some curry and roti, and welcome to Kaito Falls. We don't want a plane trip. We don't want an aerial view of Guyana. We want you to sit live on television with all these people I spoke to and say to us, with evidence on the table, that your actions weren't racist. If they can do that, please, Mr. Jeffries, come to Guyana.
Well, I to some extent, I may want to agree with you, but
Yeah,
understanding the
yes.
nature of the beast,
Mm-hmm.
these things will do nothing to them. What the
To them.
beast, the political
So
beast,
true.
the PPP has to do is to basically come out and say that they have gotten it wrong and they have to apologize to the entire African Guyanese community, not for perception, but for the wrongs that they have done. They have terminated the services of over 3,000 persons since they have gotten into office since August 2nd. And look, this is not the first time they have done this. Mr. London, you probably, we're not that far off in terms of age, but you were a
No, we're not.
youngster back in 1992 when they got into office. And one of the first things that they did was fired all of the black reporters at Chronicle, at GBC.
I remember.
All the foreign service officers who are of African descent, except one lady by the name of a friend of mine. We later became friends. Her last name was Singh, but she was not East Indian. And so when
I
Rohi,
remember.
I was told the story that when Rohi got into the office and he realized that Singh is not an Indian person, she was immediately let go. So this PPP has a history of racism. They have a history of victimization. They have a history that whenever they're in office, lots of crazy things happen. People get assassinated. Ronald Waddle, Courtney Crummy Wing, Sash Saw, and some members of his family, and all these things, and trumped up charges against individuals, drug lords and drug dealings, and all of these things are rampant whenever the PPP is in office. But I tell you this, Mr. Lawton, with all due respect, I don't trust the PPP to have any discussion with Mr. Hakeem Jeffries, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, until they come out publicly and admit that they've done wrong, admit that they have personally targeted persons of African descent, apologize for the wrongs that they have done, then possibly we can have some talk. But I respect what you said. Go ahead, Miss.
Yes, thank you very much. I do agree with your last point, Mark. We should not trust the People's Progressive Party Civic. The reason why I'm saying this, Mark and Apostle, is that just before the declaration of August 2nd, 2020, we need to remind our viewers and listeners, it was the very People's Progressive Party Civic, the then presidential candidate, now the installed president, when himself and a team of them met with the Guyana police force, and also I think it was the Honorable Bishop Edgell, who publicly stated that public servants will not lose their jobs.
Yes, I
Public
remember.
servants will not lose their jobs. Well, 1 year into office by installed means, Apostle London and Mark and listeners and viewers, we have seen in excess of 2,000 public servants losing their jobs. How can we trust these people? So for me, I stand by my position. I cannot trust the People's Progressive Party Civic. They should not be trusted. Likewise, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries should not trust the People's Progressive Party Civic, much less to sit and to have a discussion with them.
But
And
please note my point, if I may.
it's kind of like from a biblical standpoint, Mr. London. Sorry that I spoke over you for a quick second,
That's
but
fine.
do you think that that approach is because remember the story of Jesus Christ, and I don't want to get into biblical stuff with you because you'll chew me
That's
up,
fine.
right? But the story with those money changers in the
Temple.
synagogue, that Jesus Christ decided that, look, I'm tired of these guys, man. I'm not
These
going to
guys.
sit and have discussions with you guys. I'm not going to tolerate you guys to brock the dance. So you know what he did to those money changers, right? You're smiling. Hopefully, I got it right.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeshua the Messiah was strong enough to understand that nobody could influence him to make him change his mind. That's exactly my point. I do not foresee Congressman Jeffries as being too weak to deal with the people. And just my point to be made even clearer, I said the condition on which I would love to see him here is that the member or the leader of the opposition will be present. I would like to think that Apneos, he can trust the leader to speak in the presence of the president of Guyana and Congressman Jeffries live on television to debunk anything they wish to say. This is not where the PPP Civic is controlling the narrative, because if he's meeting with all stakeholders, as I said, including Claudette Singh, live on television, who can control him if Joseph Harmon is present? He's not having a closer meeting with anybody, which is my point. Now, if APNU cannot trust their leader to represent them at that forum, maybe he should not be your leader.
Fair enough. I got you. But I'm sure that Hakeem Jeffries, who is a congressman, he has his executive staff, he has his chief of staff, he has his PR team, and he also has all those other colleagues in Congress and in the Senate,
yes,
especially the Black Caucus. I'm sure that they will meet and decide on the way forward. One of the things that I am almost certain is that Hakeem Jeffries, the honorable congressman, will not be meeting with those corrupt cabals and racist cabals in the PPP. It is not going to happen at all. I feel a way, Miss Ferguson, when you address Mr. London as apostle, and you ignore me because remember there was Apostle Mark as well, right?
Okay.
Let's get back to Apostle London. One of the other things, as we are looking at the time, that Mr. Jeffries spoke about, Congressman Jeffries spoke about, he called for the immediate removal. He called on the Biden administration to remove the current U.S. ambassador to Guyana. I presume that you were pleased to hear that call because you have uttered similar sentiment. Your take on when you heard that?
Again, if I could meet Mr. Jeffries, I will give him a strong embrace and thank him for making Guyana see that I'm not crazy. I maintain that for as long as Sarah Ann Lynch is on the shore of this nation, Joe Biden is not serious about Guyana. She has done more than enough. She's violated Article 9 of the Vienna Convention of Treaties. She has totally trampled on our internal affairs to the point whereby probably she's acting as though she is without restraint. She should be removed from this country as a signal to us as a people that the Biden administration is serious about moving forward, because Sarah Ann Lynch is absolutely silent regarding the atrocities that my people ethnically are experiencing. She was most vocal during the election period, but she's now acting as though nobody's suffering here. She gave Irfan Ali, so you cannot unite the people if you're sending one set home so often, dragging them before the court so often, and another set are deemed to be angels. So I am glad that Congressman Jeffries is asking for Sarah Lynch to be removed. What I'm sad about is that she was not sent home a long time ago because she doesn't have to, nobody has to ask her to leave. In terms of them recalling her, she should be told to leave Guyana by anyone who has any degree of merit.
All right, it's still left to be seen um, whether President Biden is going to act. Mr. Jeffries, a senior member of the congressional, I believe, Black Caucus as well. It is just left to be seen. Mr. Jeffries, Congressman Jeffries, has access to the President of the United States of America and the Vice President of the United States of America. And I want you guys to know that that is important and that is solid. And that is what the PPP is so concerned about. And he's a respectable congressman. He is not known to be eating the king's meat. He's not known to be meeks or weeks or whatever. He's not known for that. And so that is why Mr. Jeffries stands out over some of the others there
Yes.
with eating the king's meat, right? But it just left to be seen whether President Biden is going to act. Sarah Lynch became the ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Guyana. She got her credentials on the the 13th, I believe, of March 2019. So she has until 2022, March 13th, before her time is up. You know, I'm not going to place any bet on that because I rather suspect that, and this is not, the congressman is powerful in Washington, but I would be surprised if she is removed before her time, unless she resigns. She has passed her retirement age now, but I'll be surprised if she's removed by Biden administration. I'll be surprised.
Me too.
You want to add anything else, Ms. Ferguson, or should we go to our closing remarks?
Well,
Before we go to our closing remarks, what is your take on what's happening? What are we hearing now about the mayor of Georgetown, Ubraj Narayan? His security is being taken away from him.
look, Mark, this, I am really, really sad to hear what the Honorable, His Worship the Mayor, the Honorable Ubraj Narayan, is currently faced with. The City Council for the past couple of months, they have been under tremendous attack since the installation of this People's Progressive Party Civic. They're so hungry for power. Whether they have already gotten it at the national level, they tried it at the regional level. They're controlling some of the regions, 7 out of 10 regions. Then now they're attacking the local authority areas, more so Georgetown, because their eyes are upon Georgetown. They feel that the city of Georgetown belongs to them. But I got news for the People's Progressive Party Civic, more so the installed minister at the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. The councillors at the Georgetown Mayor City Council, they were not installed. They were not selected, but rather they were elected by their people in their respective constituencies to serve. And they have a lifespan. And if elections are called tomorrow, then if they weren't performing over the past year or two, it is the constituents who will have to have them replaced, not the minister of local government, the installed that he is. But what they've been doing to the management there at the city of Georgetown, just a couple of weeks ago, you had an interim town clerk installed there at the city council. The councillors, they've spoken about the maneuverings of this regime through the local government commission. Now they've attacked the the mayor of Georgetown, Ubraj Narain. Why? Because he has been vocal. Ubraj Narain has been speaking out what himself and councillors have been experiencing since the change in administration under this installed regime. And now to go to the extent of removing security from his private home, which he is entitled to. Which he
And not
is
only that,
entitled to.
not only that, Madam MP, as we were looking at the time, is that they have done so when he's not in the country to be there with his family.
Exactly.
Leaving
Well,
his look, that is evil, so evil. Speaking of evil, let's go over to the apostle. And I'm sorry because our operator is digging into me and say, "Hey, time is." But Apostle London, and we leave when she left off. The Honorable MP, sorry that I say she, but Honorable MP left off by saying it is evil because those who fight for justice, stand up and fight for justice. There's a part in the Bible that says, and I'll preach it tonight, Apostle, that says when you see your brother, an injustice is meted out to your brother or your sister, and you turn a blind eye, you're equally as guilty as the perpetrator, right? Mm-hmm. There's a I believe Proverbs 21:15. You know what it says about justice? You know what it says about justice, Apostle?
Tell me.
When
I want to hear you preach.
When justice is done, you know what? It brings joy.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Now you're a preacher. You're qualified. Yes. You're qualified.
Thank you so much. And so what Hakeem Jeffries did, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries did, was justice. So it brought joy to us, right?
Yes.
But the others seem so uncomfortable about that, what Hakeem Jeffries said. I give you this opportunity, Apostle London, to make your closing remarks on whatever you want to make, sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you. And I shall, being the typical preacher since you brought it out of me, ride the wave of what you've just said. If the PPP Civic are just in their thinking, they should celebrate the fact that Congressman would have looked at Ghana to say that he is intolerant of racism, or he's not going to tolerate or be kind towards, I'm paraphrasing, any act of such. You should be happy to know that somebody in the world feels this way. It should not bother you to hear that. I rejoice to know that someone says no, racism should not exist. But let me please say that Guyana is or has suffered for decades at the hands of divisive politics. And we've heard this cry forever. It can only end when independent thinkers develop the courage on both sides of the aisle to say that we are not going to have our nation strangled. The record has shown that the PPP Civic has consistently done harm to even the economic development of the masses, not a few who are faithful or loyal to you, the masses of Afro-Guyanese. I close with what Charles Ramson would have said, and I read his post, I hope he doesn't remove it, that the PPP Civic's focus is on giving wealth to their supporters, while APNU AFC has the supporters following nonsense. From a minister in government, understanding the atmosphere in which we live, that statement, if we look at the economics of our ethnicities, speak to some degree of your guilt. Guyana must rise from the ashes of destructive elements in politics, who can only survive based on ethnic war and not wars of intellect and intelligence. I appreciate your having me here, and it is my hope that this issue regarding the mandatory vaccination would unite us all, because we are all suffering, most of us, and we all have cause now to say to our political leaders that we demand to be treated with equal regard and respect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Ferguson, for sharing this platform with me. I appreciate you. Thank you, Mr. Benschop.
And thank you so much, Apostle London. And please do, when this program comes to an end, give my regards to those who are barking in the background there. They're
They're not
probably
mine.
they're not yours.
They're mine. No, they're not.
Well, the Bible says, thou shalt not commit thy neighbor's dogs.
They're not my neighbors. They're not in my neighborhood.
But Pastor London, you are correct that in the struggle against this mandatory vaccination, and I am for vaccine. You are not against vaccine. I'm sure the honorable MP is not against that also. But you said the coming together of all of the people, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their political affiliation, and so forth. And I just want to
Yes.
leave you with this while I prepare to go back to the MP, is that what came to mind, another part of the scripture, I'm feeling inspired tonight in
You
showing off
surely are.
that it says in Proverbs 3:5, I believe that's what it is. Or is it Proverbs or, sorry, not Proverbs. Gosh, we struggle not against flesh and blood, but against
That's
principalities.
Ephesians.
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 Yes.
Sorry about that, man. I feel like
Yeah.
I should just go study and get a pastoral.
The content is fine. You don't have to cite the, the verse.
And as we sit here this evening, Apostle, remember what it says in Proverbs 3:5. Lean not on thine own.
One understanding.
All right. With that said, now let's go over to Prophetess, Member of Parliament, Annette Ferguson. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Your closing
Thank you very much, Mark, for having me here on your program and also in the company of Apostle Williams. Look, Mark, I want to say to our listeners and to our viewers that Guyana has seen a different atmosphere since August 2nd, 2020. And as a Christian, my only assessment of what is happening here is that our nation has been overtaken by evil and wicked spirits. And I do believe it is time for Christians, brothers and sisters, to come together. Let us join hands and rub shoulders together so that we can, move this veil of evilness from across our nation. I must applaud Apostle London for what he has been doing thus far with regards to mandatory vaccination. And I trust that many other leaders like him will build that kind of boldness and fortitude to stand up against people who feel that they can oppress an entire nation. So my plea here this evening is for Christians to step up and do exactly what is required of them. When a nation is in turmoil, who do people look to? They look for those who can lift the nation before God and call upon God so that he can do what only he alone can do. And finally, Mark, I want to say to all of our viewers and listeners here, this fight is not only for the politicians. This fight is for all Guyana because Guyana belongs to Guyanese. Guyana belongs to one ethnic grouping, whether it's Indo, Afro, Chinese, Portuguese, Amerindian. We are all Guyanese, Mark, because when we leave these very shores to go anywhere in the world, what do they ask us on those immigration documents? Your nationality. We can't put Afro Guyanese. We got to put Guyanese because that is who we are. What nation or which country are you from? You're from Guyana. So it is time for all of us to stand together and say enough is enough so that we can send the People's Progressive Party's civic scattering. The evil must run when when the forces of Almighty God come together. So hope is there. Hope is there. And let's fight together for a better Guyana. May God richly bless us all as a people and as a nation. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much. All, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of how you feel politically, regardless of whether you are Christian, whether you're Hindus, whether you are Muslims, or whatever you are. I've noticed my Rastafarian friend, Commissioner Cole, is listening. Good evening to you, Commissioner. And salam alaikum to all of our Muslim brothers and sisters. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And our Hindu brothers and sisters, Ram Ram and Sita Ram to all of you as well, because this is a struggle, like I've said, is not against flesh and blood. We understand that there are a lot of people who are of East Indian descent who are not in favor of what is happening in Guyana right now, especially by this installed regime. And so we all must hold hands. We must hold hands and fight against all forms of racism, all forms of corruption, if we will have a better Guyana. And so I end by saying thanks a lot again to Congressman Hakeem Jeffries for what he has done. He's bold enough to say that. And the installed regime, members of the installed regime, are running helter-skelter because they're hurt. Their feelings are hurt. And I hope that Mr. Jeffries, if ever he does meet with them, it has to be under certain conditions. But I do believe at some point in time, he will meet with them. I don't know when. I'm not going to say never, because I heard a lot of those Republicans said that they're not meeting with the Taliban, that the Taliban are terrorists, the Taliban are murderers. And
Right.
there it is in 2020, November, Mike Pompeo was in Afghanistan when they negotiated, Trump administration negotiated the release of the co-leader, the co-founder of Taliban, who is now the head of Afghanistan. And speaking of Sarah Lynch served as head of, I believe, the U.S. aid there in Afghanistan. She also speaks Arabic. So she would understand when I say Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Alhamdulillah. She would understand that. And I do suspect, though, that there may very well be a congressional hearing into the conduct of certain State Department officials, including former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and what his instructions were to the folks back at the U.S. Embassy in Guyana. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a congressional hearing on that. And in that congressional hearing, you know what it's going to prove? That the coalition government was kicked out unjustly kicked out of office, and the PPP were installed. The racist PPP was installed. I have absolutely no apologies for saying the racist PPP regime. And to all of you, our listeners, thank you for tuning in this evening. And thank you to our guest, Pandit Dinesh Jai Prashad, Member of Parliament for Region 6, Apostle Nigel London, who may very soon throw his hat into the political race. I am sensing that. We'll talk about that some other time on this. And thank you, Member of Parliament, Miss Annette Ferguson. Thank you all so much. Continue to be safe. God bless you. And God bless our beautiful country. So long.
Bye-bye.
Until tomorrow, same place, same time, right here. Tata.
It's hard to be at peace with the ones who are so discard. It's hard. Them have a knife in your back and them smile it so broad. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. I never never want to take your glory, Lord. Send your angels to encamp around about me and stand guard. To envy is so easy and to love it is so hard. Let me work for your glory and not for the award. Don't make me ever get caught up in the scream and the applause and go talk about the blessing and not talk about the Lord. All these things are vanity. I need your reward. Let me be real. Don't put on no facade. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them. Give me flesh with the crowd and shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Sticks and stones can break my bones and words can harm me. They can harm me. When the evil come against me, you'll protect me. You'll protect me. Father, I need the strength of your son, cause you know my work is not done. Lord, I need that endurance just to finish this race that I run. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. And help me to deal with the fans them. Kill me flesh when the crowd is shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. You tell me if you stand firm, cause every little plan you have a confirm. I know them evil plan turn. In a darkness, me a the lantern. So help me if you deal with the ones that who said them love me when them really don't. Jesus, help me if you deal with the fans them. Kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them. Kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them